My name is Barb Peters, and I come from the Yale First Nation, and I live on the Ruby Creek Reserve. My parents moved down to Ruby Creek when I was about 3 years old, and I've stayed down Ruby Creek since that age. I grew up in Ruby Creek when there were no homes around, no neighbors. It was really quiet, and our backyard used to be the playground, and we considered our swimming pool the creek in the back of our house. A long time ago, we didn't have any hydro, and we had our bathroom outside, and I remember when Mom used to have to pack water from the creek to cook and to bathe us. So we made a lot of trips down the creek, and Mom made it fun for us. And we used to pack in buckets of water for our food and for our bathing. And I remember when we had no highway going to Hope or to Agassiz, so Dad and Mom used to have to cross a river on a rowboat and go grab a taxi on the other side of the river or one of the tugboats and go get groceries, and they would have to make 2-3 trips back and forth on the river to get the groceries home. And it was really scary watching them sometimes because the waves used to be really big. But Dad was such a good oar on his boat, so winter time it was really hard. We had no way to get out. So Dad had to stop the trains, and he'd get a ride into Hope on the overpass, walk into Hope, grab the groceries, get a taxi, stop the next train, come into Ruby Creek, and Dad would hop on that train with all the groceries. Trainmen would help them and unpack the groceries at the railroad tracks and then take them home. So Dad and Mom had a lot of ways of shopping for us when we didn't have access to the highway. I don't know exactly when the train started stopping in Ruby Creek, the passenger train, but they had a little red house on the other side of the tracks that everyone that used to wait. And as people start leaving, like some of them lived way up in the hills, and they used to come down and catch a train. And that eventually went away, I guess because there wasn't too many people. But I remember me and my sister catching a train to Vancouver, and how we get them to stop. We'd have a flashlight, and then they'd stop for us, catch a train to Vancouver, and then on our way back, we'd catch a train back, and they'd stop right in Ruby Creek and let us off. So it was just wonderful when they done that, and then after a while they stopped doing that. I guess there was just no more people to pick up. We were just young girls, like 17, 18, when we'd catch a train to Vancouver or Abbotsford or wherever we wanted to go. But I can't remember how much it was, but I know back then it was quite cheap to catch any kind of train, but now it's just so expensive. Our fishing spot was mainly down Ruby Creek area, and that's where we fished all the time. I never got to know Yale until the highway went through, and my sisters ended up getting with the Hopes, and then that's how we ended up knowing the fishing spots. But as for me, I never went fishing up there. But my daughter's dad fishes up Yale, so she knew what it's like to fish up there, but I never went up there myself. I remember when Mom and Dad would, mostly Mom, she would pack an overnight food for the weekend, and we'd spend the weekend down there. And I remember her when she'd make the bed for us down there, we'd be looking at the stars, and we'd eat down there, and she'd clean fish down there. We'd spend all weekend down there. And Then Dad would bring the fish home, but none of us ever came home. Our weekend was down the river fishing all the time. And we never had anyone saying fish for 4 days. We could fish as long as we wanted. And Dad would stop fishing when he had to go back to work, and he was a logger, just working down Ruby Creek there. But yeah, we used to be always with Mom and Dad when they'd go fishing, and it was just awesome down there, watching them catch the sturgeons in the springs, and oh, they were humongous. A 7-foot sturgeon one time, and the springs were just big. I couldn't remember what Mom and Dad done with the springs. We probably canned it. But when Mom and Dad would catch a sturgeon, there's, you know, that sharp part on their back? Well, Dad and Mom used to pull it out and then give it to us kids, and we'd eat that all the time. So we ate a lot of sturgeon back then, but not anymore. Just quit eating it. I don't know why, but I remember eating sturgeon all the time. When I got older, Mom used to tell me stories about the time when she was in residential school. And of course back then I didn't know anything about residential schools or how bad it was. She never talked about the bad stuff. She always talked about how much fun her and her friends had in residential school. I remember her talking about the food, though, how horrible the food was. And when Mom got older, she never ate rice. She hated rice, and Dad was a rice eater, and Dad never went to residential school. And Mom really hated rice, but she liked her potatoes. She didn't use sugar because they didn't have sugar in residential school. Of course, Dad was totally the opposite of Mom. Sugar, rice, you know, everything. But Mom, she always shared her stories about just the good times she had. If she was ever abused in residential school, she never shared that with us. And I remember one time when me and my sisters were listening to Mom talk to her sister, that Catherine, she's passed on, and they were talking in their native language, and me and my sisters were trying to copy them. And we thought we weren't doing anything wrong, and then Mom ended up getting really upset with us. And she told us, you be quiet, you don't talk like that. And we were really confused as why Mom was so upset with us. And of course she never explained it to us, and later on in the years I understood why she got so upset with us. 'Cause I guess she was scared she was going to get in trouble because they told her not to speak her language, and she lost her language. She used to, I assume she knew how to speak it really good, but I guess when she went into school she just knew some of it when she talked to her sister Catherine. Yeah. And I asked my sister Peg, why do you think we never went to residential school? And I remember when I was young I only went for a few days, and me and my sister ran away from there. But what Peggy explained to me is because Mom and Dad allowed the priests and the nuns to do catechism with us, and they came about 3-4 times a week, every week, and they teach us the Lord's Prayer and the Rosary and all that. And Peg said that's probably why we never went into residential school. And when they were trying to get us to go to residential school, Dad won't let them take us. And then we ran away from there and ended up at Grandpa's place in Seabird and stayed there for a while, and we ran away from there and came home. But I think I was only about 5, and my sister Ruby was probably about 9 or 10 when we walked all the way from Seabird to Ruby Creek to get away from the residential school. So I'm really happy that I wasn't in there that long. and I never knew anything about it until I was older. I remember walking outside and I was wondering what my dad was doing. And he was busy hanging a net. And Dad and Mom used to always buy us cameras. We just loved our cameras. And I snuck behind Dad and I told Dad, I said, "Dad!" And he turned around like that and I snapped his picture. And I asked him, I said, "Can you teach me how to hang a net?" And he taught me how to hang a net, and after that he made me hang nets all the time. So I was the one that hung the nets mostly for my dad. Yeah. And I remember when they were sober it was a lot of fun, but when they drank it turned out awful, eh? But yeah, I remember Mom and Dad been really good parents to us when they were sober. He provided the family well, but and the friends that he was working with drank a lot too. So I can remember them drinking a lot, and then I can remember them sobering up for 2 years and going back again. And then at one point, Dad broke his leg. He got hit by a car going to Hope, and he was off work for about, oh Jesus, more than 2 years. And that's when they start drinking lots, because Dad couldn't go back to work. We had to move to Vancouver for a while. I can remember those times were really sad for me, but I didn't know why I was sad. All I knew, we got pulled out of Ruby Creek and had to move. And Mom and Dad were always drinking and fighting. And yeah, I can remember, it just seemed to never gotten better after that, after Dad lost his job. He just wasn't the same after that. I guess he felt useless, I don't know. I had 4, but my oldest son passed away in 94. He was 18. He got hit by a transport just up the road from where I live, that little bluffs there. He was going home drunk, and I guess he was on the road and that truck didn't have time to swerve and miss him and end up hitting him dead on. I never read the accident report for years. As a matter of fact, I just read it like a couple of years ago. And everyone was trying to say, well, not everyone, but a few people were trying to say that he committed suicide, but I knew it wasn't because his dad just passed away a month before that. He took it really hard. And when I read the accident report, it said that he didn't commit suicide. So I lost him when he was 18 and he was pretty drunk. And he lasted 4 hours in the hospital before he passed away. And that truck driver that hit him felt really bad about it. And I tried to catch up to him to tell him it wasn't his fault, but I never did get a hold of him. And those were really bad times back then when I lost my son. Lost a lot of my relatives up the road there from the highway. I can remember my sister saying, "You know, Barb, when the highway goes through, we're going to lose a lot of our people." And I said, "Yeah, I know." And sure enough, I lost 2 of my sisters up there. A lot of friends from Chihuahua, Siebert, getting hit by transport trucks and that. You know, yeah, a lot of people had died up in the highway there since it went through. My daughter Vanessa, my daughter Jolene, she lives in Edmonton. Her husband's stationed up there. And my son Kyle, he's living in Chilliwack. And I think I have 12 grandchildren. Yeah. I have 2 great-grandchildren, Mateo and Taylor. Yeah. Well, I like to have a drug and alcohol-free home. I don't want ever have my grandchildren see me drink. I'm not a drinker. and teach him, like my youngest son, he didn't know about the sweats or anything, and once he started learning that, he started really thinking about himself more. So I guess more culture in our family, like the smudging, the sweats. I don't go to much sweats anymore, but my children do, so I'm really happy to see that. And just, you know, keeping open the communication. Like if we get in an argument, I don't want it swept under the rug. I want to discuss it and figure out what happened and resolve it instead of pushing it away like I did all those years. You know, like as soon as an argument, I'd run away, let it fix itself, but nothing was ever fixed. It was just piling up. So I don't do that anymore. And teach my children patience, you know, to be patient with other people and their elders, and to respect their elders, since I've become an elder myself. And have more time and play games with one another. But ever since the iPads and that came out, I hardly have any more communication now. Yeah, so, but yeah, we're a close family. Yeah, we get along quite well with one another and communicate. Well, I would like our young ones to start getting their education. So if they want to work for the band, they can. Like, I'd like to see all our members work for the band. I like to see more housing. I like to have a band office someday, and put in more, I guess, more culture, I guess, and gatherings. I find when people gather, it just brings them a lot closer. And it seems we're doing that now, but some of the band members are mad at the chief and council, so they don't come for whatever reason. So from the beginning, there was a lot of people coming, but now there's not too many because they're angry. And I don't know if that'll ever be resolved or not, but sure, my chief gets me mad. Like some of the things I don't agree with, but there's a lot of things I do agree with what he's doing. And when I take a look at the hard work all of them are doing, you know, I really appreciate it, and I tell them that, you know. And but yeah, sure, I get angry at them. I some of the things that they do I don't agree with, but I know in the long run they're doing it for us, you know. And Yale has changed so much from the old hands into the new hands. And I mean, look at housing. I never thought I'd ever see units down Ruby Creek. It bothered me at first because I was so used to living in such a quiet area. But those are changes that I have to get used to. And a lot of changes happening in Yale that we all have to get used to. And I'm one of the person that have a hard time in changes. I just don't like my world rocked, you know, I really don't. But when it does, it's okay. I see now why. And the people that are living down Ruby Creek, they're wonderful people, you know, so it all depends on how you act with them or how you interact with them, that everyone will get along, you know. And some of them don't believe in their culture, and you can't push that on them. Some of them are total believers in the Bible, and I am too, but I believe in my culture too. Because Mom really stressed that to us, God is the one, so I still believe that. So yeah, I think a lot of gatherings and probably more dinners and meetings will probably start getting us closer together. And maybe the other band members will understand why they're so angry at Chief and Council. Well, Mom's culture of Chase is a lot different from ours. When a person would pass away up Chase, what they would do is have a 4-day card game for 4 days for the one that passed away. And they have their big dinners down here, but we're different down here. The only thing we don't is play cards for 4 nights and 4 days. I wouldn't mind that. And I noticed too, the burnings have sort of dwindled now. When I was living in Ruby Creek, there was a lot of bad stuff going on down Ruby Creek, like scary stuff, bad spirits. And it was affecting all of us. And I told my daughter, I said, we need to have a burning. So we started out in March once a year to have a once a year burning. And then our dear friend that done the burning for us, they all passed away. So that it sort of stopped after. It stopped. We didn't have a burning after that. And the burnings used to last a lot longer, like hours upon hours. And right after the funeral, you'd have to go to a burning. And that really started burning out a lot of people, including the ones that were doing the burning. So what I found is they shortened it a lot, which is, I don't know if they were supposed to do that, but I know they shortened it quite a bit. Instead of being hours now, it's only like 2-3 hours instead of 7-8 hours. You bring out like all the ones that in my family that passed away. My sisters, my brother, my parents, plus my cousins and that. We get a plate for them. Like, we used to try to get their favorite dinner, but we had to cook a lot of separate things. So we just cooked one big meal, and then we get paper plates, and then we'd put a little bit of food on each, like fish, rice, potatoes, and then we'd have a fire. It'd have to be built a certain way, like a bed. And then we'd place the plates on the fire and then send the food to them. And it's really amazing because you know when they receive it, because the smoke will perfect, just beautiful, will go up like that, and we know they received their food. And it took us about 2 hours at one time to do our whole family. And when we were doing the burning for our family, the guy that was doing the burning, he said that one spirit came walking into the yard and he was lost. And he was a Hungarian that worked on the railroad tracks. And he told a spiritual worker, I've been wandering around here for years and I want to go home. So our spiritual worker did a prayer. We all did a prayer for him. And when he was walking out of Ruby Creek from the burning area, I could feel something going by me. And I knew that it was that Hungarian leaving. And he finally went home. So that was amazing. Yeah. Well, back, really, to quite honest, we never, when I was young, we never had any spiritual gatherings or I didn't even know when a person passed away, people would come together and cook a meal. I didn't know that happened. In my day, when we buried my dad, it was just a funeral. Like, I didn't see any people at my house. I didn't see any cooking going on. It was just bury Dad and we would go home. It wasn't until years later that after my sisters passed away that everybody came together help the family out, and that was really strange. Like, why are all these people in my home, and why are they cooking for us? That was weird, but I didn't know that's the way it was. When my nephew passed away, he was only like 2 months old when him and his mom got into a car accident. And he landed in the Children's Hospital in Vancouver, and I went down there and I sat with him, and he was alive, but he was brain dead, and I didn't understand that then. But I sat with him, and I didn't want to leave him because I thought if I left him, he was going to think I gave up on him and die. And on the second or third day when I was with him, I told him that I was just going to go home and have a quick shower and come right back. Well, as I was getting out of the shower, the policeman phoned me, Mr. Pollock, Constable Pollock, and he told me that my nephew passed away. And he brought me to the hospital. Well, for years I carried that guilt, thinking if I didn't leave him, he wouldn't have died. And I talked to my sister about a Peg, and she told me, Barb, did you ever think that maybe Creator took him so he won't be a vegetable? And just those few words just took everything off my shoulder. And I finally let my nephew Kyle go after my sister said that to me. And it made me feel really better inside that I wasn't the one that made him die. But he wouldn't have been the same, though. If he lived, he would have been taken care of for the rest of his life. And I always remember that. It was the saddest time of my life when my nephew passed away. And I explained that to his sisters and brothers when he got into a car accident. He ended up flying out of the back window, and his head landed on this big rock. And when I went to see him in the hospital, his body was just skinny, but his head was so humongous, swollen right up. He just looked wires all over him. And I put my finger in his little hand, and he squeezed it. And I start calling for the nurse and the doctor. So he's coming around, but they told me it was just his nerves. But I was convinced that they were wrong, I was right, you know. And the best experience I had is when my sister Vivian passed away. I was in total denial until her last breath. I didn't know a person could be that much denial. I experienced it myself. I couldn't believe it. But when she was on her last breath, I was just so hurt. My baby sister dying of cancer. And honest to God, I swear on my mom's grave, just as she took her last breath, she looked up like that. She put a smile on her face, the most beautiful smile, and I knew the ancestors were coming down to get her. And everyone around didn't see it, and they were all crying, and I was just standing there watching and just couldn't believe it. And then after she passed away, I couldn't cry for her. I couldn't cry at the funeral, I couldn't cry at the dinner. I just couldn't cry, and everybody thought I was having a nervous breakdown because I couldn't grieve. But I couldn't grieve for seeing something so beautiful like that. And then maybe 2 years later, I finally looked inside her wallet, and then that's when I started crying for her. But yeah, what a wonderful experience I had with that. I just knew the ancestors came and got her, and she wasn't suffering anymore. Oh my God, it was just amazing. Oh, I'll never forget that. I just wish my sister could have seen it, but she was hugging her, so she didn't see anything, eh? But oh, that was just amazing. And I couldn't feel bad for my sister dying. You know, I just couldn't. I couldn't cry for her because she was in a better place. I really want to serve my Creator. I really feel this has just been like a few years that I need to do something for him. I don't know what it is yet, but I feel very strongly that I need to serve him in some way, and maybe that's to have a better community in Ruby Creek. You know, no hard drugs. We don't tolerate hard drugs in that community at all. At least we try not to. People will drink in a moderate way, but they don't all party together and do silly things together. So it stays calm that way. But mostly, I don't want any hard drugs in my community at all. Cocaine, anything like that, you know. Oh, I just hate that. And alcohol. I hate house parties. They're the worst when there's so many people drinking in the house. Bad things always happen. And I try to stay away from that, and I don't have that in my home. I don't allow alcohol in my home at all. When my sister was really sick when she was young, she had sores all over her body, like boils that big. And I remember when Mom got some frog leaves and she boiled it. And then she got some white bread and she put it in she put the white bread in that sauce it made from the frog leaves. And she put it on Peg's skin and wrapped it up in gauze. I don't know how long later Peg was in bed, but it got her better. And it didn't leave one scar on her. So that was the only medicine I remember Mom taking from the backyard and curing Peggy, because I guess Peggy would have died. Doctors couldn't do anything for her. And her leg, I'm not kidding you, her legs were just swelling like that. She couldn't walk, she couldn't eat, her mouth had sores in her mouth. She was a mess. But they were just boils, like huge ones on her arms, on her legs, everywhere. And Mom boiled that frog leaf in a big pot. And then she wrapped it up on Peg, and then Peg totally got better, and she never got sick after that. It's amazing, but I wish, if Mom shared stories like that, you know, I regret not paying attention. Back then we just wanted to go play outside. We didn't care about medicines or anything. But now I really regret it, because I know Mom had a lot of information to share with us. I'm like Carol Peters. Oh, what a wonderful woman. She's the grandmother of one of my great nieces. Well, when my great niece, she's going on 12 going on 18, trying to get into mischief already. So grandmother Carol grabs a hold of her and does medicines with her to ground her. And Carol will send the medicines home with her and give it to me, and they work awesome. I use it for my hands, I use it for my elbow. On my elbow I had a bunch of, they're called warts, but they're nasty, they hurt. And I started rubbing that medicine on there. And on this elbow, it was getting big from my arthritis, and I started rubbing the medicine, and now this lump is just about gone, and these warts are just about disappearing. And then I lost my medicine. Now I gotta ask Carol to send me some more down, because it really works. And I was so amazed. So yeah, she's just wonderful. So that's where I get mostly my medicines, but I don't make any. Me and my daughter's been talking about it for 5 years. We haven't even went and picked anything yet, so I gotta push her a little bit, I guess. But yeah, I believe in the medicines. Keep the communication open, respect one another, listen to one another, And, you know, just be courteous with each other. And know that band members, you know, what I realized about our band members is we have so much to share, but we don't share it. We don't go anywhere to share our information. It's just, I'm not saying that we're muzzled. I sometimes I just get that what we have to say, I don't know why I should say this on here. I just get sometimes that chief and council think that our words, because they have a high position and because we're band members, it just seems that they think our words don't mean nothing. That what we say, they push it aside and say, this is my saying, what you say. I don't know, it's just maybe not heard enough, I guess. I don't know. But other than that, I guess that's the way, like our new chief and council, I have so much respect for them too, because they've done so much for the communities. Like in that short time, they've done so much, and I know from what I heard, they want to do more, like more housing, get more jobs going, more education. And all the band members that are on welfare, I'd like to see them off welfare and working, especially the young adults, like the ones 24, 25, and the ones in their 30s. I hope they all work for the band, and we'll just have band members working for our band and get a band office someday. The chief and council had to go to another building because it was all interacting with one another. I don't know. But they felt they should have their own building, which is understandable. But I just hope that someday we'd be able to find some money somewhere to get our own band office. And Chief was saying that maybe by the river. Oh, that would be so perfect by the river. Oh, yeah. But I wanted it down Ruby Creek, but they were saying probably up Dogwood would be better because there's no mosquitoes. And then Ruby Creek is tons of mosquitoes down there, so. But wherever they put it, I don't care. I'd be happy to have a band office.